has really established itself in the last 5 to 10 years as an institutional asset class, data showing really it's uncorrelated and outperforming some of the major indices. And the reasons for that are that it's pretty resilient to economic shocks and trends. Consumers want to consume sport regardless of what's going on, and they will prioritise the spending on that. There's scarcity value. There's only a certain number of teams and sports assets out there, so both of those really contribute to that. Mostly when we talk about investing in sport institutionally, we're talking about men's or potentially mixed gender sports. Women's is at the moment, it's a sort of rounding error at the end of talking about the total size of the sports market. But I think what's really exciting and why it's interesting to us and why we set up Sphera to invest around this thematic is it's growing, and I think will continue to grow exponentially from here. We've had this moment of unlocking of the potential, and I think that's come. Women make up 50% of the population, but women's sport is only a tiny proportion of the value. It was only a matter of time, and we've had a confluence of sort of social movements, generational shift, people caring much more, and ESG. Equality, diversity, being much more in the conscious, and I think they are some of the reasons that are fueling this. And I think now, as I say, we've started that flywheel. It's only set to continue, and that's what's creating the interesting investment opportunities. Yeah, it's still. Despite all of the excitement, and we're seeing records set almost every week around viewership, around media rights deals, around commercial sponsorship deals, the profile of athletes. But it is still very small, and when you compare audience sizes, for example, they are very small in comparison. And that has historically been, at least in part because we weren't able to watch women's sport, that there was low production quality, it wasn't on at times. Gradually those myths around why people weren't watching women's sport are being debunked, and so now it is more present, more available for people to watch. But we've still got work to do to drive fan base, and that's really where it starts, is driving fan base. It is shown to be a different fan base there's lots of overlap, but it skews a little bit younger, more family orientation, more inclusive. I think all of those reasons are why actually there's a lot of commercial interest in it, because we're reaching this new and different audience which has some really positive value characteristics to it. So driving fan base who are engaging. They don't necessarily want to watch a full 90 minutes or a full format, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're not engaged and you can't monetize around them. So drive fan base. On the back of that, you can drive commercial sponsorship and interest in new and innovative ways. More money can come back into the sport, which raises the player salaries and the quality and investment in infrastructure, and the cycle can continue. And I think that's where we've tipped over into, is where this flywheel can happen, such that more investors are going to come into the space, which contributes to putting capital into the system. I mean, it depends what you're looking for as an investor, but if we think about the most developed sports and the most developed sports markets from a women's perspective, really we're thinking about football, basketball, cricket, potentially on the women's side, markets, the US. So I think the poster child is women's soccer or football in the US, the NWSL, and we've seen really explosive growth there in the last, very recent history, in the last 3 or 4 years. And some of the valuations, Angel City Football Club in LA, that traded at over in excess of $250 million recently, making it the most valuable women's sports property globally. So there's lots of reasons to get excited when we see statistics and figures like that. Once you get outside the US, once you get outside some of those sports, it the size of these opportunities become quite small quite quickly, and so some of them aren't ready for investment yet. You know, they need to get to a point of maturity where they are ready to take investment, and the pressure that comes with that investment, that they're going to have sufficient growth within a period to return that investment, assuming it's not just philanthropic. But our view is that, you know, while it only is a handful of sports today, that over the coming, you know, 3 to 5 years, you know, it will be a much broader plethora of sports that we will also be looking at. I think while we've seen in the NWSL, we've seen growth quite quickly. I think, yeah, lots of what people are talking about in the industry is also needing to have patience for this to, you know, if you think how long men's sport has taken to develop, it's not that it's going to be overnight. So one also does need to have some patience, because we think about, you know, just think about the talent pools. It's to have enough people of a quality in, let's stick with football, operating in the Division 1 leagues, you've got to have kids, young girls starting to play football. It's got to be accessible. There's got to be grassroots support, participation, development pathways to drive that talent. I mean, it's one of the reasons why the US is more developed, is because, you know, in the however many years ago it was Title IX, and which was a directive to ensure rebalancing of financial support to women's sport within colleges, and that's really driven the development of and the depth of talent in the US.